And welcome into M&T Bank Stadium here at Baltimore for the Commanders' final preseason game against the Baltimore Ravens. This is Command Center Game Day live on the Commanders' YouTube and social media platforms and broadcasting live on our flagship Big 100 in DC and across the Washington Commanders radio network. Preseason game number 3. This is where jobs can be won or lost, where your life and career in the NFL can be extended, or maybe this is potentially the last game for many players of the dream of getting to the NFL. This is where they have that chance to really shine. Bram Weinstein here with me today for this one as well. Okay, Bram, John Harbaugh's team has rounded off 22 straight preseason wins dating back to 2015. Of course, last season it was absolutely atrocious against Washington, 37-3, as they defeated Washington. Okay, the wins and losses, we understand it's preseason, they don't really matter, but for Baltimore, apparently they do. For a lot of guys out here fighting for a position in the NFL and a spot on the roster here or somewhere else, this game matters a lot.
This is weird. I would call it maybe the oddest streak in sports. I don't know anything that's really like it, why they take this so seriously, and clearly it's not a coincidence anymore. They truly care about it. And, I watched their preseason games this year to get ready, to call their game, because we're going to be deep in the roster tonight with all the third stringers and fourth stringers that are trying to make both teams. And they play hard. I mean, they play really hard. There are some strange numbers and metrics. We'll talk about ours, and some of them are good, and some of them are a little, let's see how it goes in the regular season. Their backup quarterback, Tyler Huntley's 29 of 32. They're moving the ball. Their backup running back, Mike Davis, got a lot of injuries at running back. He runs hard in the hole. They take this very, very, very seriously. So maybe to be saying something if we had this streak tonight.
One of the things the Ravens will say as well is it's just kind of how they prepare for games, how they carry themselves in practice as well as they go all out. And they said that that's what's translating into the preseason as well, no matter where they are in the depth position. Now, you want to know, this is the big question, how much will we see of the starters tonight? Well, head coach Ron Rivera this week said very, 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 I think it was at least 3 varies.
I think it was 4.
Very little. This would be the preseason game number 4. Last week was basically the dress rehearsal. So that's where we got to see the extended look at our starters on offense and on defense. Very, very, very little had them out here warming up earlier and going through walkthrough, which would lead you to say,
very, 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 very little chance of us seeing them play at all, with the exception of a couple of spots. There's a lot of injuries on the offensive line. There's a lot of injuries at tight end. So they may be asking a couple of players that may start or play prominent roles in the regular season to take one for the team tonight and go out there because they need some live bodies to play. I will say there was one good thing in pregame behind us that I thought was a really encouraging sign. Both Logan Thomas and Cole Turner were out there warming up with the team. Logan Thomas didn't have that big, bulky knee brace that he had on earlier in the week when he came off a pup. So that's a nice, encouraging sign. I don't know what it means for either one of them for week 1, but 2 weeks away, you want to start seeing some of these guys come back so they can get their full team ready to go against Jacksonville.
Logan Thomas would be absolutely huge, and as he said this week, he believes he is the starter. Of course he is. Nobody's going to argue against that, but it does get really interesting behind him, and Cole Turner was really being electrifying and kind of catching our attention before the injury came with him. There's other position groups that head coach Ron Rivera even told me that they're going to be looking closely into here at this game, because they basically have, for the most part, the roster set. But there's that 6th or 7th potential receiver, should they go 7 receivers, which they did last year, or that 4th or 5th extra D lineman, the linebacking room. And Coach told me as well, the secondary is going to be really interesting to see who earns that roster spot. What are you going to be most looking forward to say, okay, this number might be someone we're calling on during the regular season in this room?
Watch special teams closely. Who are the linebackers, safeties, defensive backs that are part of that? Because I think that's a good hint that these are people that at least have a better shot than some of the others that are out there. I think certain position battles, you mentioned safety. Stephen Parker has made his name felt here in training camp. Jeremy Reeves and he might be fighting for one spot. At linebacker, there are 3 young linebackers that are out there. One of them is going to make the team, possibly 2, largely dependent on what we talked about earlier with all the injuries. This might be an unbalanced roster, not 25 offensive players, not 25 defensive players, mainly because they may need an extra tight end, may need an extra offensive lineman, and if they want to keep 7 wide receivers, well, where do you cut to make that actually happen? So at the bottom of the receiving core, Alex Erickson, who's a veteran, has done a lot for them. He and Dax Milne seem to be fighting for one spot if they don't keep 7. So there are some interesting decisions that are coming.
Erickson has a little more experience in the league, but Dax Milne, of course, that player that they just drafted last year, and still kind of seeing what he can become as well. I feel like he's had a pretty good camp, but then really both have. So we'll see what happens here tonight as well. If there are some question marks, third down defense, Some different complications maybe on defense where we were really expecting this team to be really, take that next step. In Kansas City, granted it was against Pat Mahomes, where they converted a 5 of 5 third down conversions, and they had some struggles even getting to him and taking him down. Where would you see for this defense? Because the first team won't be out there. And again, for some of those guys coming in that can still have an impact.
I want to see them start fast. I don't care who's on the field. We've seen 4 halves of football. In each of those 4 halves, it doesn't matter who the opponent is and who their quarterback is and what their personnel is. They have gone on long drives and scored every single time. So I'd like to see this team start fast, and we've gotten used to this over the last couple of years. They get behind in games. So I don't want to see that as a carryover into the regular season. That's something that I think we're hoping will switch up with, 1, a more dynamic offense, but 2, just some better defensive play, I think, early. Get out of the gate fast. And on the third down defense, I don't know that I have an answer for this. And, it's really hard to understand why that's carried over here. Ron Rivera's talked about the pass lanes and the pass rush, and I think he's trying to put some pressure on the moneymakers on this team, the defensive line, to say, come on, get with it, get with what we're doing here, get with the program. And so I think that was purposeful in the way that he went about it. And hopefully, listen, what happens here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen in the regular season. Look at the Ravens, who haven't lost a preseason game in 6 years. Well, last year they were 8-9. So it doesn't mean just because you win all these games, you play really well, that it's going to carry over. And in the case of this team, but there are some things that we've seen that I think we'd like to see change, and certainly third down defense is something that they need to get answered.
For sure. A lot of that goes to what many want to say is, like, what is the scheme being called? How aggressive are they playing? How much will we see of that tonight? Well, again, it will not be with the starters here as well. Injuries. We talk about defense. Chase Young was officially placed on the physically unable to perform list. That means he's out for at least 4 games. Yeah. We don't exactly know how many he will end up missing. Could it be more than that? Yes, it very well could be. But their goal with him is to make sure that he's here for the long term. And we just saw Ryan Kerrigan coming in here as he's considering coaching. He was here for a good 10 years, right? Yeah. They want Chase Young to do the same. So they say they will not rush him back. Chase has been quick to say that as well. When he's ready, he will be out there, and he wants to be impactful. Meanwhile, the game night weather, mid-80s with thunderstorms potentially. I don't know. It looks like it could be like that. The weather report says maybe it's not coming. But either way, that cool breeze has cooled things off just a little bit because it was rather sticky and humid coming in here. But it should be a great night for some football. Okay, Bram, we'll have you back again top of the hour. And, of course, throughout the entire game, Bram will be calling all the plays. But when we come back here, we have Rick Doc Walker joining us at M&T Bank Stadium. You are watching Command Center Game Day Live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and you're listening to the Washington Commanders football. Time now for your player profile, brought to you by Pepsi, official soft drink of the Washington Commanders.
Lucky Charms or Captain Crunch? Captain Crunch.
So it's funny. I like Lucky Charms because of the marshmallows. So when I was younger, I used to eat just the marshmallows. I'd leave all the other stuff.
Probably Lucky Charms, even though I don't eat much cereal anymore.
Instagram or Twitter? I like pictures, so Instagram.
Instagram, even though I don't live on really either of them very often.
Oh, Twitter. I like Twitter. I definitely like Twitter more.
Vanilla or chocolate? Chocolate.
Vanilla, always.
I've kind of changed. I really like chocolate, but growing up. But I think if you like a good vanilla bean, you can't go wrong with that.
City or country? This one's tough. Country.
I definitely like the city more. I'm more of a city guy, being from Indianapolis.
Country for sure.
TV show or movie? I'm gonna go TV show.
Movie.
TV shows, normally.
Basketball or baseball? Unpopular opinion, baseball.
We'll go baseball. That was probably more of my love as a kid.
Post route or go route? Post route.
I'd like the post route because I think especially against cover 4, I know I'm getting that ball if that safety bites on that underneath route.
On the clock. He hands it off. Finds a hole in the middle. Clear. Nothing but moves. Incredible. A touchdown for the win. I can't believe it.
Pizza. Better with Pepsi.
You ever wonder why people are always on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. Look at this guy. He bought those tickets on his credit card, and he's racking up the rewards.
She's using Zelle to pay him back for the hot dogs he's about to buy.
that's going to bring it to
And
a
the
close here
announcer?
after 3.
He's not checking the stats. He's finding some investment ideas with Merrill.
And third, as you know, in baseball means 3.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
With Honda, every summer adventure is the destination. Take your adventures farther with Honda, America's most fuel-efficient, full-line automaker. Hurry into a local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily.
Well, my baby doll gives me special love. It's the kind of stuff.
Honey, it's your turn.
I'm on cloud 9.
Pizza, better with Pepsi.
And Rick Doc Walker here with me, getting ahead of preseason game number 3. We're talking a lot about how the Ravens have been undefeated for 22 straight preseason games. But you know what? For Rick Doc Walker, that does not matter, because in 1982, they went 0-4 in the preseason. And guess what happened that year that they went 0-4 in the preseason?
12-1.
And a Super Bowl ring to go along with
Yeah.
it. So there's how much weight you should put into the wins and losses. But, Doc, look, there's a lot that really matters out here outside of the final outcome and the scorecard. What are you wanting to see? We know the starters. We're not going to see them out there. So this is where you can get depth on your team, and we know how important that is. What are you going to be most focused in on as you'll be working the sidelines for NBC, or working the booth for NBC's broadcast?
Well, really, the secondary, guys who we consider to be on the bubble, guys I like a Shaka Tony. Is he going to make the cut? Is he going to fit in our secondary, where there's some definite race that could be determined on special teams? So, and also the big uglies up front. Somebody has got to make the team, whether you're injured or not. And so I want to see who fights for it. I always envision that one of these young kids has a fiance, she may be pregnant, and they're at the point where this is everything. Now, how hard are you going to fight for it?
It's what it boils down to,
is
what is your why, and how important is that to you? And even Jeremy Reeves this week was saying that he understands his why all that much more this season, as he had lost his mom last season and played with that. Said football really helped him, but it's understanding your why. Maybe your why is a very young family. Maybe it also means that this is your last chance to make an impression, to extend your life in football as a professional player as well. There are some concerns on defense. What would they be for you?
Well, just guys, you hear about assignment-friendly football. Are guys actually doing their jobs? And also, I'm looking for guys that come up and just have a savage approach. They don't really give a hoot about what the play is called. They go rip somebody's head off and go get the guy with the ball. I mean, I look at defense like, let's not overcomplicate this. Go get the guy with the ball. And that guy wants to do it, he can make a fortune. I would sell that simple. Because sometimes I think maybe you get a little too complicated, and guys are thinking, then they're not attacking. And we got guys, I don't like that.
We do have a lot of young players as well, which is what Coach Rivera really wanted, because he believes that is how you build a team that can be sustainable getting into the postseason every year, is off a younger team, younger legs that really understand what they're being asked of them as well. You're starting to get that now, and he even told me that this team has his fingerprint on it more than any team that he's had here so far. When it does get to that and you're seeing some of the breakdowns, if it's simplified, is it just overcomplicated at this point? Is it that simple to say?
It's either that or stage fright.
Okay.
I mean, let's face it. If you don't bring it, you don't scrimmage or practice against another pro team. All you're going up is against yourself. You're a 7-win team. So let's be face about it. It's a butter knife versus a butter knife.
When you watch this game, will you be able to tell how good Washington can be depending on some of the reserves and depth players that we may have coming out of this game?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, what I'll be able to do is feel good about it, but I can't tell until I see it, and that'll have to happen against Jacksonville.
What about offensively? Again, Carson Wentz and the starters. Coach has said very, 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 very limited.
Which means not at all.
Not going to be out there.
Forget about it.
Doesn't want to take the risk of getting anybody injured before Jacksonville in a couple of weeks, but we've seen some of them out here having to kind of come from behind, take a little bit to get into rhythm. But overall, a very simplified offense. Scott Turner is very close, not going to tip his hand to what they probably want to do throughout the season. What have you seen from our starting unit and the additions that they had this year as well?
Well, look at Robinson, for example. It wasn't fancy with him, but he just breaks collarbones. I mean, running straight ahead. This is not that complicated. If you get guys on that offensive line to get a good Norwood, we got some studs up front. We got to move people in front of us and get a guy back that's like a battering ram. Hey, we used to do it with John Riggins. That's what I'm looking for. All that complication and all that fancy stuff, that's great on paper. But when it comes down to it, you either control the line of scrimmage or you get controlled at the line of scrimmage.
Logan Thomas is back. We were watching him earlier, just warm up here on the field. We're not sure if he's entirely going to be ready for week 1, but of course that is the hope and the expectation. Do you see him being, because we know Carson likes his tight ends, that's no secret, him being one of a go-to for Carson?
If he gets back and is cleared and is healthy, of course.
Who do you like to round out that tight end room? Because I feel like that's very interesting because they have just been hit by injuries left and right.
Well, the top 3 guys, I mean, obviously aren't going to play. So if 85, 82, and 87 are out, I'll play more than they'll play tonight. And so, you know, I can't count you until you play. I go with the guys that are there. I mean, this is not fantasy football. Either you can get on the field and play or you can't.
I love it. Doc just keeps it real and simple when it comes down to it. But we know it only one team gets to win the Super Bowl. Doc has won a Super Bowl. And today you'll be winning the game as well. You'll be in the booth with Kenny Albert. Logan Paulson will be on the sideline. Logan's going to be joining us a little bit later as well here. Been having fun with it so far?
Logan, he's here?
Yes, he is.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, good. I heard he was caught in traffic.
Logan's never late, I will tell you that. That man shows up on time. He is prompt. All right. Well, from one former Washington tight end to another, Doc's broadcast partner, Logan Paulson, will be here next when we come back at M&T Bank Stadium. You are watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and this is the Washington Commanders Football Radio Network.
Dude, fire.
Grill master, huh?
Burgers, better with Pepsi.
This is Maya Titan. She's smiling because her small culinary supply store, Titan's Pans, is up and running. And this is NFL star Derrick Henry, accidentally tagging Titan's Pans instead of his loyal fans. Which, very unexpectedly, has her business trending. And trending, and trending, and oh my. And there goes the internet. Good thing Maya uses FedEx to help prepare for unexpected demand. Because you never know what's next.
With Honda, every summer adventure is the destination. Take your adventures farther with Honda, America's most fuel-efficient, full-line automaker. Hurry into a local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily.
Pizza, better with Pepsi.
Come on in. Our pregame show is presented by the Washington Times, the exclusive reporting and proud partner of the Washington Commanders. And joining me now, as promised, is Logan Paulson, from the tight end of Doc Walker to you yourself. We were talking about some of the tight ends there. He was saying that you were stuck in traffic, but you actually were lost.
I was lost in the stadium, which is kind of like being lost in your own house. It's a weird deal.
It's very odd. You're probably used to coming in on the team bus,
sure, yeah,
right into the locker room. And now, since we have you doing reporting duties, you have to find your way.
Yeah.
How's it going for you so far as you have Logan Paulson on the NBC and NBC Sports Washington broadcast?
It's been great. I really appreciate the opportunity. You hooked it up, and hopefully it's going well. So.
I got a good eye for talent, That's what we're going to be doing here today, though, evaluating talent, although it's not my job to evaluate the talent on the field. But, look, this is something that you really you've been doing all of training camp as well, and especially during the first few preseason games. I want to get your evaluation from what you've broken down on film of our first team offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to give a really sound evaluation of the first team offense because every coach you talk to, wide receivers, tight ends, OC, they kind of say we're holding stuff for regular season. So they're not kind of going all in terms of game plan, in terms of execution yet. And I think that's okay, and so it makes the evaluation a little bit tougher. But from what I've seen, I think the offensive line's played outstanding. I think the young tight ends are very, very, very talented. I think you see the talent at wide receiver and the depth at running back. So it's just about whether all that comes together when the game plan's on the line.
You get kind of excited when you get to see the full playbook as well, because there's going to be a lot of options of what they can do, and especially as we've seen now Brian Robinson, how he can also catch but be a very hard runner. You can put him on the field with AG, with JD, with the receiver, and you can basically be 4 wide as well.
Absolutely.
With that option. And it'll, imagine, confuse defenses.
Yeah, and it just, like you mentioned there, though, I think the personnel matchup there makes it really challenging. Do you match in base? Do you match in nickel? Do you match in dime? And if they're matching in one of those lighter personnel groupings, you can run out of that. And I think, AG, we saw what he can do last week against Kansas City in terms of catching the football and what an electric player he is in space. So, again, very, very exciting opportunity with that backfield and all 3 guys.
Okay, what about the first-team defense?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the first-team defense is when you look at the defensive line, they played really well against Carolina and then kind of took a step back against Kansas City. And the secondary struggled against Carolina and then played really well against Kansas City. So I think once both of those groups start playing together kind of on the same page, I think that's when you're going to see an elevation in play. And some of that third down stuff I don't think will be as significant.
Okay, there you go. You just got to play it out. Now, when it does come to tonight, it's going to be Sam Howell that's going to be starting.
Sure.
Taylor Heineke is going to be his backup. He's there just for more emergency, which you hope you don't have to get to. So they're really going to give Sam Howell. They already know what they're going to get from Taylor Heineke. And I think if you were to put the starters out here, you'd put them out here if you still wanted to see something further from them. And they feel pretty solidified in what they're going to get with their starters on offense, on defense. Where is the strength on this team?
The strength? I mean, I think we already talked about some of the strengths in terms of skill positions offensively. I think you feel very, very good about the running backs, and you feel very good about the receivers. Obviously tight end's a little bit in flux right now because of the injury situation, but talented group as well.
How do you like that room shaking out?
That's a tough one.
Tricky,
that's the million-dollar question right now.
Logan Thomas is going to be there. John Bates is going to be there. He earned a spot, although he's been dealing with injury, trying to come back from as well. And then where do you round out the other two, potentially?
I think the big question is, do you do a little musical chairs with John Bates and Cole Turner? And what I mean by that is one of those guys on the short-term IR for the beginning of the season. And if that happens, then it's probably Armani Rogers and maybe Kendall Blanton, a guy that they just signed earlier this week because of his experience. And then you have John Bates, Logan Thomas, Armani Rogers, and Kendall Blanton, which would be a very unexpected Final Four.
This game is for the bubble guys. Any names in particular that you say, you know what, I want to see a little bit more of them tonight? We'll probably be evaluating them the same way as the coaches may.
Yeah, I think that one guy that sticks out to me is Milo Eifler. He's done a really nice job on teams, and he's flashed a little bit.
The linebacker.
Flashed on teams, flashed playing linebacker in terms of big hits and making tackles. But can he do it for the course of a game? And can he maybe play himself into like a 5th linebacker spot or usurp Khaleke Hudson for that 4th linebacker spot? So, again, that's a guy that I think is really exciting. And then, obviously, Christian Holmes has been getting some reps at gunner during practice. That's usually a good sign. Can he kind of solidify that position with a solid performance tonight?
We were talking about the rosters before, and Bram mentioned this, is that it more than likely will be more offensively heavy than defensively when the numbers all shake out. London Fletcher goes, isn't that how it always goes? The defense is always shorthanded. It's the offense that gets the extra player or two, a lot of it because of the return game or how they do go in on special teams as well.
Yeah.
All right, have a great game.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah, looking forward to this. And again, Logan Paulson joins us all year round on our Command Center shows as our NBC Sports Washington. And of course, we also put him on our YouTube channel, but tonight he is working the sidelines, not grabbing a helmet, not suiting up. I know there's times where you tinker with that, but no, we need you. You're too good for us in the an analysis
Well, thank
role.
you. I appreciate that.
Well, coming up next, though, our captain, London Fletcher. He joins me here on the field at M&T Bank Stadium, and we're getting set for the final preseason game for the Commanders. You are watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms and on Big 100. You're listening to Washington Commanders football. Time now for your Fresh Takes, brought to you by Safeway, the official supermarket of the Washington Commanders. Julie, Logan, Santana, Logan, in this game, who do you want to see show kind of what they have going up against the Ravens?
I mean, for me, the guy is Curtis Hodges. I think he's, been sidelined by injury a little bit, and he's really got to stake his claim to that fourth tight end spot, and I want to see him. I think he's got a lot of potential. It'll be interesting to see if he does play. Not sure if he does play, but if he doesn't play, Jared Patterson's another guy I'm keeping an eye on.
And then Santana as a vet who's not expected to be out there playing, if at all. Like, what are those guys doing on the sideline?
Well, it's different strokes for different folks. I think a few years when I was, in that position or at that position, some coaches would say, hey, we still need you guys to prepare well, as if you was playing, and then come that day you might get a break. I might be on the sideline like we always talk about the hot dogs, making sure my socks roll down, I got my tennis shoes on. Or you might come out there and get a play or two just to show the other team that we might play you guys. So, it's kind of, mixed views when it comes to that. But I just always been a pro. Just get prepared like I always prepare, and whatever they might, whatever bone they might throw me, I'll take it when it comes.
What I also liked hearing you say is that you'd be kind of coaching up some of the guys in your room on the sideline as well, knowing that this is their opportunity to really kind of make a name for themselves and potentially a roster spot. Like, that's just straight being a good guy and a good teammate on there as well. Understanding cut day's coming, and it's going to be very hard, no matter where you are in that room, to say goodbye, or if you're the one that's actually being cut as well. Okay, Saturday, it's here. This is the last one.
From selecting the perfect produce and triple checking its quality to preparing it for you, we have perfected the art of fresh.
You ever wonder why people are always on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. Look at this guy. He bought those tickets on his credit card, and he's racking up the rewards.
She's using Zelle to pay him back for the hot dogs he's about to buy.
That's going to bring it to
And
a
the
close here
announcer?
after 3.
He's not checking the stats. He's finding some investment ideas with Merrill.
And third, as you know, in baseball means 3.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
Imagine coming home to a place where the fun never ends. A happy community set in beautiful rolling horse country, where the custom homes and villas are extraordinary, and the Jack Nicklaus signature golf course and other amenities make every day another reason to smile. Visit Creighton Farms and you'll see it's happiness on a grand scale.
And we are brought to you by RTS, a better waste company. Find out more at rts.com. Wonderful night for some football. The weather is perfect, just a bit of the 80s, a little bit of cloud right here. And the lights will be on because pretty much every game so far has been at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and will be for the foreseeable future. London Fletcher, the captain, the commander, joins me. Now, you like the night games better than day games, or are you like you want to just wake up and go straight to the field?
I prefer to just wake up and play the game. The thing about the night games, you're sitting around in a hotel room all day waiting for the game to come on. But you love the attention that you get, a national TV game, Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football. So you love being in the spotlight, but it's a long day as you wait for that game to happen.
Is there a different approach for those games with the spotlight than just a regular 1 o'clock?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's different because as soon as the schedule comes out, obviously you're going to circle who you're playing, first game of the season, then your national television games, your Sunday Night Football game, Thursday Night Football game, Monday Night Football. And your mindset going into that game, you know all your peers are going to be watching, so you want to shine in those games.
All right, starters, not playing tonight. Nobody's watching them tonight. We're watching those who have the opportunity to fill out the roster, add some depth. But let me ask you about the starters. And I've been asking all offense guys. I feel like I need to ask the defensive guy the questions on defense. And how concerned are you, or how confident are you in where this team stands right now?
You know, I'm a little bit more concerned than I was going into the Kansas City game, because you looked at the first Carolina game and the opening defense, the starting defense, they give up a 13-play drive to start that game to Baker Mayfield. They give up a field goal. And then the starters against Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, 2 12-play drives going for over 80 yards. And it's a lack of attention to detail. In the first game, I thought the pass rush was pretty good, but the coverage wasn't the way it needed to be. This past game against the Kansas City Chiefs, the coverage was good for the most part, but the pass was not where it needed to be. So they need to get more in sync. Rush and coverage need to be in sync as far as stopping opponents. I'm a little bit more concerned, but I feel, hey, they have 2 more weeks to get that stuff shored up.
Where does it get shored up? Where do you start? Is that coaching? Is it film work? Is it just the personnel that you have and the communication of guys understanding their assignment?
It starts first and foremost with, obviously, the scheme. From a scheme standpoint, guys knowing their defense and putting a lot more emphasis on the attention to details. Hey, if you're supposed to be in the B gap, be in that B gap when you're rushing the quarterback. If your leverage is inside in coverage, make sure you stay inside. Don't get beat to your leverage or away from your leverage. So things like that. And there, you hear this thing. It's a lot of different small things to add up. There are no small things in football. Mm-hmm. All of these things are big. So it's more attention, greater attention to details, understanding the opponent. Hey, you gotta run a quarterback. Maybe you can't get up the field as much. You're going to have to cover a little bit longer. Just paying more attention to that stuff, and the coach is really harping on that stuff in practice, in the meeting rooms, on watching film, and then seeing it happen on game day.
There's little things that it would be easy to dismiss, but you are right. It is in the details. And when you think about it, the game is always a game of inches as well. And there's been so many games where you see it might have been won or lost by a couple of inches or by just a field goal or an extra point. So it does matter when you do get down into the nitty-gritty, and those details do matter. On the bigger scale, Chase Young, he's not going to be out here. And not for at least the first 4 games, as he's on the physically unable to perform list. So there's a chance for, some of the guys, as we know, who will probably be out there with him, but a chance for some of the guys here tonight to also make a case to kind of fill in at depth. How do you see the rest of that D-line coming together? Who's picking up that slack?
Well, right now, James Smith-Williams is the starter. He has been starting the first 2 preseason games. And Casey Toohill, he's played a lot. Finding that third defensive tackle, or that third defensive end, whether it's F.L. Bada or it's somebody else coming off that edge, William Bradley King, Shaka Toney, he's shown some burst off that edge and the ability to get after the quarterback. There's not another Chase Young. There's a reason why he was the number 2 overall pick. I mean, they don't just grow on trees. Those guys have to go in there, dominate their roles. Don't expect to be Chase Young as they play. Just go out and play their roles and play it well.
Playing your role is playing the role that the coaches ask of you. A lot of the guys coming in here, and we even saw on that D-line last year when Chase did go out, they would say they start to understand to play as a unit and understanding what the scheme and what they are being asked of. That scheme comes from defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. What have you seen that he's asking? What is his scheme?
Just obviously they're 4-3 defense, and it's all predicated and built on the defensive front creating havoc, getting up the field. It's a 1-gap defense. They're not asking their defensive linemen to 2-gap and take on blockers and the linebackers run free. No, they want the defense creating a new line of scrimmage, penetrating, getting pressure on the quarterback. They actually blitz a lot more than I thought. They blitzed the 7th most in the National Football League. I was surprised when I saw that stat. Now, they're not getting home as much as you would like to, but from a pressure standpoint, they do bring a little bit more pressure than people think. It's predicated on the defensive front, getting pressure on the quarterback. They don't, from a coverage standpoint, they like to play a lot of off man-to-man or match zones. I love to see them pressure and get in the face a little bit more. That's just me.
Do you want more? Because, Santana Moss is with us on Command Center each show that we have throughout the year, and he's always saying, he's like, guys are afraid to put their hands on somebody now. He said, if they played as much off as when I was a receiver, he's like, my numbers would have been absolutely insane. What do you think the attest that changes to?
Well, I think as I look at it, I feel like they want the guys to be able to see the receiver and the quarterback, play with more vision on the quarterback, be able to drive routes. As you get up and play, in your face man-to-man coverage, you kind of limit your ability to make interceptions and things like that. But the one thing I love about it is you disrupt the routes of the receivers, you disrupt the timing a lot more, and you make them make contested catches a lot more.
Now, Doc Walker would say the game's going soft on him. I don't know if you would say the same by a lot of this as well. We do need to see a certain amount of physicality, and now that there's quite a few players this year, they didn't go out and add a lot of different pieces to defense, but they are saying that each room is better than it was last year because they further understand what the scheme is from defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio, what their assignments are. It's putting it all together, and until we get to see them in live action against the Jacksonville Jaguars, we'll still have to be going, okay, prove it to us. That's what we want. All right, London will be with us in the booth all game long and be joining us back here a little bit later as well. But coming up, part one of my conversation with head coach Ron Rivera as he prepares for his third season in Washington. You are watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and this is the Washington Commanders Football Radio Network.
When safe drivers save up to 30% on their auto insurance for not answering their phone while driving, they feel like a pretty big deal.
Steve, did you get the ice?
Even if they forgot the ice. Save up to 30% on auto insurance with USAA Safe Pilot. Get a quote today.
With a new Toyota, you can practically make summer stand still. From making a splash in a Highlander to fitting in more fun in a Camry or tackling a trailhead in a RAV4 hybrid. Who's a good boy? Enjoy the last of summer in an exciting new Toyota during Toyota's national sales event.
Right now, buy a sporty Camry and take low 1.9% financing, or take 1.9 APR on a Corolla sedan, hatch, or hybrid, or $500 finance cash on a Corolla Cross.
Come in today.
Toyota, let's go places.
And how about a deal for football season from Lido Pizza? Get an 18-inch, 2-topping Lido Pizza, 8 pieces of cheesy garlic bread, and a half-pound of boneless wings for only $36.99 plus tax. Make sure you get your order in now as we're getting set for preseason game number 3 here against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens have won 22 straight preseason games. something they take pride in, but really is one of the most useless stats and records in the NFL right now. Meanwhile, Washington trying to get their first win in the preseason, but this game will all be about depth and rounding out the roster as the starters going to be taking the day, sitting on the sideline, watching this one, giving the coaching staff the opportunity to see who's going to be that guy that gets to continue on here for the Washington Commanders. Part of that would be from the head coach, Ron Rivera. Here's my conversation with him earlier this week.
Coach Rivera, this is now your third off season, and probably the first where you get to have everybody in person, a little bit more normal of what you're used to of life outside of COVID. How so far are things, I guess, going for you?
I think that things have gone well. You know, there's been a lot of pluses, things that we're building on, we're getting better at. You know, this is a group for the most part that really is our group in terms of the types of players, the number of players. It's a young team, it's a young group of guys that are really coming along, developing. You know, there's a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm for those things. And we have who we believe is a guy that can be our quarterback for a while.
That's something I know you really kind of came in here quickly, and this is a team that I always told people that has like your fingerprint on it more than any other year that you've been here. Is that would naturally take a little bit of time. You got a veteran quarterback, which I think you always feel like you wanted as well because there is a lot of youth. How do you feel Carson is in that room, kind of like leading the guys, working with them? Because I look at that offense, and it is young and it is exciting.
Yes. Well, when you look at the skill positions, that's where you truly do see the youth. I mean, at running back, you know, the veteran guy being JD. Tight end, the veteran guy being Logan. Wide receiver, the veteran guy being Terry.
Right.
And you sit there and go, wow, but Terry's only going into his fourth season, you know. But that's the veteran guys. Where you really see the anchor, though, is our front. You know, our front five is a group of guys we feel very comfortable about and really think that these guys can help protect Carson, give Carson the time he needs to get the ball to those talented young players.
Do you feel like, are there still question marks on that line?
Oh, yeah, there are. I mean, first of all, because of the health. I mean, we've had some nicks. We've had some guys at a couple of different positions that, you know, we haven't got a chance to really see them work with Carson. The tight end position, we have a lot of questions. Obviously, the only one that's been healthy has been our Armani. He's the only one that's been out there.
And he's a quarterback.
Yeah, he was a quarterback.
Tight end.
But the best part about him is he's such an athletic football player that he makes plays. So it's going to be real interesting, I think, when we really start to get everybody back in the next few days. You know, we won't have everybody out on the field on Saturday, but once we get back together the following week, we'll start to get all our guys out there and start prepping as we get ready for the opener.
So as you're dealing with a lot of these nicks and bruises and that line constantly shuffling, guys having to play multiple positions, which you preach a lot of for very valid reasons when you see this is how it goes. I guess where is it in being ready for Jacksonville? Because you've kind of had limited time with them in the preseason against a different opponent.
Exactly, and that's the big concern you have is that, you know, we haven't seen them all together. You know, and what you really want to be able to do is once we get to next week and we know, that group has to work together over and over and over in preparation for Jacksonville.
Defense. What about the first team defense?
You know, I've been very pleased with a lot of things out there, but I really felt that Saturday was a disappointment in terms of our third down. It's been something we've talked about, something we've worked on, and for us to not be as successful as we needed to be, that was disappointing. Why? Because those are all things that we can do better. First and foremost, we as coaches got to make sure that these guys understand the important significance of what that third down is, what the importance and significance of who that quarterback is, and then go from there. You know Patrick Mahomes is out on the field. There's a certain discipline you have to rush with. You know, I thought the secondary did an excellent job in terms of coverage. You can only ask them to hold their guy, you know, be around their guy for so long, and then things start to break down. And that's really what you saw when you put the tape on. That's it. You know, we dialed up a couple of pressures, and we didn't run them the way we needed to, and because of that, the pressure got there just a step too late. And so you look at those things and you say, you know, that's disappointing first and foremost, but that is correctable.
The pressure on the quarterback, we even talked to Deron Payne, he's like he was looking forward to going up against Pat Mahomes because it would be a good challenge and a test to kind of where they stand against a mobile quarterback, and of course, a $500 million man too. There's a reason you get paid for that. Yeah, you make a change at the D-line, the room and the coaching staff there. Is there a natural timing for when maybe it'll get to what you want it? Yes. Because obviously there's a reason you make changes.
I think there is. I think they're starting to come. They're starting to get the mix together and the feel and the understanding of one another. I think Jeff has stepped in and done a very nice job. And these guys are just starting to really get to know who Jeff really is. I mean, he was the assistant for a couple of years. Now he's the head guy. He's in charge of the room. He's the guy that's making the decisions on what's happening as far as the way they're preparing, getting themselves ready to go. And then game time, he's got a big influence and impact. I think Jeff's done a nice job. I think the guys are getting used to it.
Sometimes we think he might get in there and play as well.
Oh, he would love to. I know that.
He looks like it. There's a reason he played 17 years as is.
Nino was just out here as well on the field talking with some of the other coaches. He does look like he could get out there and play, but he does have the attention of the room, and it does follow under his leadership to get that defensive line, one of the strengths of the team, to function as head coach Ron Rivera wants it as well. You can get that interview with head coach Ron Rivera on our YouTube channel, and always we air on NBC Sports Washington and NBC Sports Washington Monday through Friday, 5:30, 10 p.m. as well. And of course, all of our content again is on our YouTube channel. But when we come back here, we're not going to be seeing Taylor Heineke, as he's going to be an emergency situation quarterback. Sam Howell's going to get the start and get the bulk of the play today, unless should an emergency happen. But we did chat with Taylor Heineke for the first time. I had the opportunity to chat with him after last week's game. We have that conversation coming up next. Now, you are watching Command Center Game Day live on Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and you're listening to Washington Commanders football.
Veterans, you may have earned a variety of VA benefits. Did you know VA can help you further your education and pursue professional training? The Home Loan Guarantee Program can help you buy, repair, or adapt a home. VA provides housing support if you find yourself homeless or at risk of homelessness. And don't forget world-class health care. Learn more about these and other VA benefits. Visit choose.va.gov.
With Honda, every summer adventure is the destination. Take your adventures farther with Honda, America's most fuel-efficient, full-line automaker. Hurry into a local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily.
You ever wonder why people are always on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. Look at this guy. He bought those tickets on his credit card, and he's racking up the rewards.
She's using Zelle to pay him back for the hot dogs he's about to buy.
That's going to bring it to
And
a
the
close here
announcer?
after 3.
He's not checking the stats. He's finding some investment ideas with Merrill.
And third, as you know, in baseball means 3.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
Experience the inaugural season as the Washington Commanders. Season and single game tickets are available now at commanders.com/tickets. So this is the final preseason game here in Baltimore, not too far from where the Washington Commanders do play. But in a few weeks, it will be the Jacksonville Jaguars coming to FedEx Field to kick off the season before Washington takes to the road to take on the Detroit Lions. On paper, those should be wins for the Commanders. But of course, it all boils down to what they do here on the field. Now, Carson Wentz comes into town, takes over the starting duties. He will not be playing tonight, but so far in the first few preseason games, he has put up he's led the team with 16 and 22, 138 yards, 72.7% completion percentage, has not thrown a touchdown so far, and just to 1 interceptions and getting a sack as well. Then Taylor Heineke has come in and really led this team. And after that, it was Sam Howell that's come in and led this team back in the earlier preseason games. Today's game does belong to Sam Howell, as he was drafted in the 5th round. A surprise to the Commanders that he was still available at that spot. They said they could not afford to pass on him, despite not having plans to draft a quarterback. Howell, many argue, would say could have been a higher up, a 1st or 2nd round quarterback draft round pick, had he not had the last season at UNC where he lost all of his offensive line and all of his weapons. But we've seen he's a gamer, he's a baller, and he's not afraid to go out there and put it all on the line. We'll see more of that tonight here in preseason game number 3. But let's now hear from my conversation with Taylor Heineke after last week's game. This is the first we've had the opportunity to kind of talk with you since you've been able to get out there in the preseason, get your arm going, your legs going. How does it feel just to get back in game action for you?
It feels good. It's a lot different than last year. I feel like I have a lot more experience. The game's kind of slowing down a little bit for me. I feel a lot more comfortable out there. But again, there's a lot of room to improve, and some areas that's what I keep working on during practice.
You had an outstanding throw to Cam Sims there in the end zone that really only Cam was going to be able to bring that down. Tell me about that connection, what you saw in that drive.
Yeah, me and Cam have had that connection since the Tampa game in the playoffs 2 years ago. I think I threw him the ball 9 times that game, and he caught 8 of them, and we've always had that connection. I feel very comfortable throwing to him. He's a big body. He's got a long range, and he can catch the ball. So, I saw that play. I saw the safety flow over, and I knew there was going to be a hole there for Cam to get open. So I just, put my trust in him, and he made the play.
So good he was healthy, too. I mean, that play before was definitely scary with him, so glad to see him get out there. Look, the offensive line has been going through a lot of different injuries. Not a lot of guys out there. You're forever kind of playing behind somebody else. But it seems like the way that they played today, that they held up pretty well. What did you make of their play?
Yeah, I thought they played great. Again, there's been a lot of switching around during practice and stuff, and due to injury. And I think Coach Masco does a great job of getting those guys prepared. And you got the leaders like Keith Ishmael out there. You got Chase out there that's kind of like running the show and make sure they're doing the right thing. So, we have a lot of leaders on the offensive line, and we feel pretty good with anyone out there.
A little adjustment for you as well, constantly behind different guys. Tell us a little bit about some of the younger receivers that are going to be fighting for one of those roster spots at the back end.
Yeah, they're really exciting to watch. There's 4 or 5 of them now. I'm just like, they're out there on the field, and it's a joy to watch them. So, cause at any point they can make a big play. So, again, it's going to be a tight deal there to see who makes the squad. But I'm excited for them. They're all playing well. So, we'll see what happens.
And then you watch Sam Howell go in behind you. What kind of words do you have with him? You see some of those plays, some of the runs. When something breaks down, then he has the interception as well.
Yeah, Sam's a smart guy. There's not many things I can tell him that he already doesn't know. He's a really sharp guy, and he can sling the ball around pretty good. So, if he sees if he doesn't see something out there that me and Carson see, we'll go up to him and say something. But again, he's a sharp guy, and he's a joy to be around.
One of the things we have seen from Sam Howell is his arm, which he says he kind of sits back and takes a little bit of lessons in watching Carson Wentz and how he approaches it, being kind of like that pocket passer. But he also says he pays a lot of close attention to Taylor Heineke, because Heineke's kind of that guy where the play breaks down, he plays with his hair on fire, isn't afraid to use his legs, get out and extend plays and find a way to make something happen. So Sam Howell is in that quarterback room learning from both Carson and from Taylor. Now Taylor is quarterback number 2 tonight. He is the emergency quarterback. It will be Sam Howell getting the majority of the attention there as well. It's all about the details for him. He's somebody that is not afraid to make plays. They want to be able to see a little bit more attention to detail, and then, of course, just go complete passes and see if he can't win this ball game to end that 22-game streak against the Ravens, since they've won 22 straight. When we come back here, we're going to bring London Fletcher back in as we're heating up for preseason game number 3. That conversation's next. You're watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube, social media platforms, and this is the Washington Commanders Football Radio Network.
4th down, seconds on the clock. He hands it off, finds a hole in the middle. Clear, nothing but incredible. A touchdown for the win. I can't believe it.
Pizza, better with Pepsi.
You ever wonder why people are always on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. Look at this guy. He bought those tickets on his credit card, and he's racking up the rewards.
She's using Zelle to pay him back for the hot dogs he's about to buy.
That's going to bring it to
And
a
the
close here
announcer,
after 3.
he's not checking the stats. He's finding some investment ideas with Merrill.
And third, as you know, in baseball means 3.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
With Honda, every summer adventure is the destination. Take your adventures farther with Honda, America's most fuel-efficient, full-line automaker. Hurry into a local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily.
Honey, it's your turn.
Pizza, better with Pepsi.
And we're about an hour away from kickoff here, which will wrap up the preseason. The team will have a week off before they host the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the win-losses, they count for real as the regular season begins. This is presented by Chesapeake Employers Insurance Company, now with lower workers' comp rates and a corporate dividend. And London Fletcher is back here with me for this one. London, the final preseason of the game, how many of those were you really involved in?
As far as playing?
Yeah.
Not in my 16 years, I probably played in maybe 5 last preseason games. And probably a total of 15 plays in all 5 of those games. Yes,
Okay.
not a lot.
That's because you're a baller on defense.
Yes.
Your position pretty much solidified out there, but there's a lot of guys tonight where their position is not solidified. And I want to know some of those names that you're going to be paying close attention to.
Well, I'll be paying close attention to the linebackers, whether it's Milo Eifler or Khalid Hudson, see how that competition kind of plays itself out. Shaka Toney, William Bradley King as the 5th defensive end. Dax Milne and Alex Erickson. That's also going to be intriguing at the wide receiver position. So those are some positions that I'm looking forward to watching those guys plays. And also you got to think at the safety position. Stephen Parker played well. Jeremy Reeves is a guy that they really like, who's also played well. Are they going to keep 5 safeties, or are those 2 guys battling for the final safety spot?
It's going to be interesting. Some very difficult decisions to be made as well. It's just some of those names that you called out there. Some have been in the league for a little while. Some still trying to get their way into the league. As Dax Milne's just coming into his 2nd year here. Jeremy Reeves been a guy with this team on defense that, is kind of the guy that might make up for not as athletically having what some of the other guys have by being able to be smart on the field and understand where guys line up. So it comes down to what is the coaching staff really going to evaluate here for them in order to say, okay, call you into our room to say you're staying, as opposed to saying, sorry, thank you very much, but it just didn't go your way. What is the biggest question mark for this team, would you say, right now?
As we look at this team right now, it has to be the 3rd down defense. Is it going to continue to be an issue moving forward and once the regular season starts? The first 2 weeks, what we've seen in the preseason hasn't been good. Hasn't been good enough. They were the 31st ranked defense on 3rd down last year. This year, it hasn't looked good. So
is that
that's
scheme?
It's I don't necessarily think it's scheme, because the first game, the calls were good. The players didn't play the technique the right way. And then this past ball game, the coverage was pretty good, but you allow a guy like Patrick Mahomes to extend plays by time with his legs. So those are definitely question marks. Things that you can sure up, but because you have that bad taste in your mouth from a year ago, you still wonder, is this going to be a reoccurring theme?
How would you grade so far this training camp?
Training camp, maybe C plus. In terms of, there's been some good things. I like what I've seen from Carson Wentz so far in the offense in terms of how he's adjusted to the new playbook. I really love what Brian Robinson has been able to do as a running back position. I've seen flashes of the defensive tackles dominating in games like they did against the Carolina Panthers. But then on the flip side, you see the 3rd down defense and some of the coverage issues and some of those prior games. So you have to say, I can't give you higher than the C or C plus.
When it comes to the first few preseason games, we know that Scott Turner, offensive coordinator, is not running the plays that we will see during the regular season. He just wanted to see, could the team get into a little bit of rhythm with each other? Can they connect? Kind of just to get, your feet wet before you start unveiling the playbook. Same defensively as well. So when it comes to this game, where your starters are not out there, how are the coaches approaching the game? Like, are they scouting the Ravens? Are they scheming up plays against them? What's the mindset?
Well, going into this game, they spend a lot of time more so with the guys who are going to play in this ball game, giving them a good understanding of what the Ravens like to do, both offensively, defensively, and from a special team standpoint, because you want those guys to be able to go out and perform well. So you've spent a lot of time repping the plays that they play, so you can see those guys perform at their best, and you can give them a true evaluation in terms of should they make this ball club.
So since you only played in about 5 final preseason games over your 16-year career, what are you doing on the sideline?
I'm encouraging my guys, paying a lot of attention to, especially the linebackers, coaching those guys up, because this game is important for a lot of players, and you want to be there and support them. There's a lot of stress and anxiety going into this final preseason game. Guys are wondering, hey, have I done enough to make this team? So I'm trying to give them as much knowledge and encouragement as I possibly can.
Passing that on, Santana Moss said the same. He says, I'm eating a hot dog on the sideline, but I'm also watching my room. I am watching the wide receivers, and if I see something that can help one of the younger players that's trying to fight for a position, he would always try and pass that on as well. Look, this is a team that head coach Ron Rivera says has got his fingerprint on it. These are more his players than we've seen so far, as it takes a little time to flip the roster as well. coming into it, building a team. He says you got to get that quarterback, you got to get him weapons, and you got to be able to protect them. Offensive line has gone through a lot of different injuries. Where is the state of the offensive line to protect when Carson is out there against the Jags?
I don't know, because we haven't seen the projected starters play together. I don't think they've taken a single snap together in training camp, let alone in a ball game. I'm concerned about them from a conditioning standpoint. Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner, veteran players, and I'm sure they'll be ready from a health standpoint in terms of knowing how to get themselves ready to play, but you still worry about the conditioning aspect of it because those guys have not been able to play together. Trey hasn't played at all during the training camp or preseason. So it's still a couple more weeks to go before that opening game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you have some concerns.
And they are picking up players as well. As just a couple of days ago, they did pick up a tight end that played with the Rams. And then also Wes Martin is a player that they drafted. They wanted him on his practice squad, but he was grabbed off of that, so they had the opportunity now to bring him in from Jacksonville. So he'll be out here as well coming in as John Matskos is continuing to shuffle the offensive line to be able to see what mix they have.
And he's the best in the business. John Matsko, I've known him since 1999, back when I wasn't playing in the fourth preseason games or third preseason game. But John Matsko is one of the best offensive line coaches in the National Football League.
The offensive line will show for that as well. Now coming up, our play-by-play broadcaster, Bram Weinstein, he rejoins us as we take a closer look at the NFC East this season, as well as Scott Turner's offense. We're under an hour from kickoff to the final preseason game. You're watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and you're listening to Washington Commanders football. Time now for your keys to winning, brought to you by Bank of America. What would you like the power to do? Time to get our keys to winning, and the Baltimore Ravens have been doing that very well in the preseason, winning 22 straight games. Julie Logan Santana here with you. Of course, you'd like to be able to snap that streak, but at the end of the day, the wins, losses, they don't really matter. But what does when it comes for the key to winning, Logan?
For me, with the third preseason game, I think the most important thing is that those guys who are playing in the game go out and just play as hard as they possibly can. For some of these guys, I know this is going to sound melancholic and kind of sad, this is the last time they're going to play football ever in their lives. So let's make sure it's the best opportunity for them, and I want to see everyone having a good time, playing hard, leave a good film out there in case, they do get cut here, give themselves an opportunity someplace else. Yeah,
this third game is going to be one of those games where these guys who are playing, it's like them being in college all over, or for the guys who are veterans, hey, this is your regular season game. Go out there and play it like this is going to be your last. So I think a key would be just go out there and do your part. And as you've been seeing these past two preseason games, that second and third group has come in there and put some points up. So I'm expecting these guys to go out there and do just that.
And the keys to winning, I think, for the coaching staff is go find those guys or those depth position. Absolutely. Find those players that can really fit in, because as we've seen year in and year out, at one point you're going to have to call on them, pull somebody up from the practice squad and ask them to contribute. So this is the opportunity to make sure you identify the right talent, the right guys that can play and be a factor on game days. There you go, keys to winning against the Baltimore Ravens.
Dude, fire. Grill master, huh?
Burgers, better with Pepsi.
You ever wonder why people are always on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. Look at this guy. He bought those tickets on his credit card and he's racking up the rewards.
She's using Zelle to pay him back for the hot dogs he's about to buy.
That's going to bring it to
And
a
the
close here
announcer,
after 3.
he's not checking the stats. He's finding some investment ideas with Merrill.
And third, as you know, in baseball means 3.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
With Honda, every summer adventure is the destination. Take your adventures farther with Honda, America's most fuel-efficient, full-line automaker. Hurry into a local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily.
It's 4th down, seconds on the clock. He hands it off, finds a hole in the middle. Clear, nothing but incredible. A touchdown for the win. I can't believe it.
Pizza, better with Pepsi.
We are at M&T Bank Stadium getting ready to take on the Ravens. This is my first time. I don't know how this is possible. I've been covering the Washington team for 13 years. This is my first time as Bram Weinstein joins me here at M&T Stadium.
Really?
Yeah.
Even on all those preseason games, they play them practically every single year. You never came up and got off for those?
I was always in the studio doing the work. So nice to be out here for this one. Of course, it will not be the day for the starters. It's going to be Sam Howell and those fighting for a roster position here as well. But what it boils down to, of what you want to be standing with at the end of the day when we get into December and January, is fighting for that NFC East crown. So, Bram, let's kind of talk a little bit about the NFC East. Let's start with Dallas, because they won the division last year, and early exit. But they also just dealt with a big injury to their left tackle as well. What have you seen from them this year, and what improvements they may have taken?
I don't think they made improvements.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's a very bad injury that occurred to them to Tyron Smith, who's irreplaceable for them. This goes along with defections on the offensive line. Lyle Collins isn't there anymore. They decided not to re-sign him. He ended up leaving. Amari Cooper was let go for a song. I don't really know why they did that. It doesn't appear as if that they improved at the receiver position. They feel like they took a step back. They lost Randy Gregory. They feel like they took a step back. And when the opening press conference of training camp, the literal first question starts with Mike McCarthy being asked if he's going to lose his job. This has this kind of, you've been through this. You know how this goes. Mm-hmm. When that stuff starts, it is hard to get out of that spiral. They start with Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. They could easily be 0-2. So I don't know what's going to happen with them. I do feel like just on paper, they feel like they're not putting the same formidable team back on the field again. That's good news for this team.
They still have Micah Parsons as well, though, but there isn't.
Dak.
And Dak,
Yeah.
but there is still a question, I think, for a lot of depth with the Cowboys. So the fact that we're not feeling that they've done a lot to really improve. And look, this is a very tough business. Many would say there's a lot of coaches around that are on the hot seat. The Giants, meanwhile, themselves, just after 2 years, decided to make a change to their coaching staff. So the Giants have a new general manager and a new head coach as well. What are you seeing with the G-men?
So the fact that they're already talking about Tyrod Taylor potentially starting, that's not a good sign for Daniel Jones. So I think there's obviously an open question for quarterback short-term and long-term for them. I think their roster is kind of in a situation that we were in a couple of years ago when Ron Rivera took over, that there was a lot of holes to fill. So I fully anticipate them being third or fourth place in the NFC East this year.
The Eagles?
So the Eagles, on the other hand, look formidable.
They've been climbing a lot of the power rankings lately because of some of the additions that they've done. I mean, you talk about a receiver, A.J. Brown, coming on, still adding there.
Yeah.
A lot of movement that they've done.
And I think, you just keep hearing so many positive things about Jalen Hurts taking another step forward. If he becomes a more accurate passer, I think we saw what he can do with the zone run game. Outside of Lamar Jackson, he might be the most dangerous quarterback with his feet, especially out of design plays. If he becomes a more accurate quarterback, they're very dangerous. Their offensive line is outstanding when it stays healthy. Their receivers got better with A.J. Brown. Their run game is very inventive. Hurts is kind of shepherding all of that. And defensively, they made massive upgrades here. This guy they drafted out of Georgia looks like a monster on their defensive line. Nakobe Dean is in the middle. They got potentially as a steal there. They brought in James Bradbury to go opposite on the corner slot. I mean, they look like they're set up to make a big jump this year, and I think they're the team to beat in the division.
James Bradbury was with Coach Rivera down in Carolina, and he'd often reference him many times, saying he's kind of the player that he wanted. Many thought maybe they would have made a move for him, but it's not. He's now going to have to go up against him and face him in Philadelphia. Okay, let's bring it back home just a little bit here. Let's talk about what you can expect from offensive coordinator Scott Turner, because that's where the majority of the additions have been made on this team.
Oh, man. I mean, this is by far, and if you want to be really optimistic about what's going to happen this year, it's by far, bar none, the best group of skill position people, top to bottom, that this team has had in a very long time. They have 3 running backs that are all extremely dangerous, that all could have very specific roles, and a rookie has emerged in a way that I don't think we anticipated to be to this degree, which means Antonio Gibson's going to have to find a role, but if they find it in space with him, he could be a game-breaking player. The wide receiving core feels like it's got 2 number 1 receivers if Jahan Dotson plays the way he's looked in the spring and the summer. Curtis Samuel being healthy is as good a gadget player as you could possibly have. I mean, I can't be more optimistic about this. And then we finally started getting glimpses in camp last week with them practicing, where we saw a little bit more, I think, of them actually installing the passing offense. And it's the first time in a while that I have felt like they have specialists at all three levels of the field. The types of players who can either run the ball or get it out in the flat and make big plays. The intermediate game with Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and the deep game with McLaurin, Dotson, De'Ami Brown. This offense, we're going to find out what Scott Turner's made of this year because he's got all the weapons.
Right.
Can he get this coordinated in a way that it becomes really effective?
It's a very good problem to have. So let me switch a little bit to fantasy football because you just rattled off a lot of names that could make fantasy football owners very happy. Give us the surprise or who you think is going to really be that person to rack up fantasy points this season.
For this team?
Yes.
I think now, and I mean, the gig is up here. Brian Robinson clearly is going to get a ton of touches now. I didn't anticipate that when camp started. So I think for a fantasy perspective that I would look at him over Gibson at this point. Terry's going to get his touches. I would still, even with all those weapons out there, they'd be crazy not to get the ball into his hands. So I still think that he's a top 10, 15 receiver in fantasy.
We need to get Terry to the Pro Bowl as well.
I think so.
He's put up the points enough to earn it. It's just I think we need to. He's becoming more vocal as well, and maybe that'll help his case because of course it is a popularity contest, and you gotta do a little talking too along with it.
You gotta win a little bit. I mean, I think an off the board like offensive rookie of the year candidate is Brian Robinson. All of a sudden, it's not gonna be a quarterback this year, so that's someone that we can watch throughout the season as well.
So the team is out here stretching, doing their warm-ups. They're wearing the burgundy bottoms with the white jerseys. Each week we get to see the new uniforms start to be unveiled. Pretty cool as we are going into our 90th season, but our very first as the Washington Commanders. The Fantasy Football Report is presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partner of the Washington Commanders. Up next, it's the Athletic's Ben Standing. He's been covering the Commanders training camp. We'll get his impressions on Carson Wentz, the defense, and a whole lot more. So stick around on Big 100. You are watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and this is the Washington Commanders Football Radio Network.
You're going to like this story because it's about you. You who forgot to charge your phone last night. You who sprints to the boarding line so your bag will fit. You with him. Until one day, you boarded a United plane that was designed for, well, you. And your phone got charged, your bag fit, so did everyone else's, but this story isn't about them. Your toddler didn't tantrum, and you got to fly happily ever after. The end.
From selecting the perfect produce and triple checking its quality to preparing it for you, we have perfected the art of fresh.
This is Maya Titan. She's smiling because her small culinary supply store, Titan's Pans, is up and running. And this is NFL star Derrick Henry, accidentally tagging Titan's Pans instead of his loyal fans. Which, very unexpectedly, has her business trending. And trending, and trending, and oh my. And there goes the internet. Good thing Maya uses FedEx to help prepare for unexpected demand. Because you never know what's next.
Time now to go around the league, delivered by FedEx, where now meets next.
Glad to have you with us as we are leading you up to kickoff here at M&T Bank Stadium against the Baltimore Ravens for the final preseason game. After this, it counts. Tonight, it counts for many ways. Ben Standing of The Athletic joins me now. This game does count. It does matter in so many facets because for so many players out here, they're fighting for that roster spot, maybe a spot on the practice squad or a spot somewhere else on somebody else's roster. Meanwhile, the Ravens, do you think they're a little too proud about this 22-game streak in the preseason?
I mean, as an organization, I think it says a lot about who they are, that if you put on that uniform, we expect you to play at a level. I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of weird luck along the way to win these games. It's not like their starters are playing, but it counts for something, I guess.
So what can we expect tonight? Like, is their coaching staff actually going to scheme and play and draw plays up against us? Is that how it goes?
I would think in the last 2 or 3 minutes they get, like, okay, we're in this now. Let's, throw that extra blitz, throw the deep bomb. I can see some of that.
So they've not lost a preseason game since 2015. They're not too far away. They're like the little brother to the Washington football team. The Commanders come in here looking for their first win, but more than that, they're really looking for players that are going to be impactful for them on the depth chart. Players are going to be impactful for them on special teams. And we're going to see a good bit of Sam Howell tonight as he's getting the start as well. But as we get into the preseason, what would you say have been the biggest storylines that you followed?
I mean, obviously the quarterback. I mean, seeing Carson Wentz, that was all the big move of the offseason. A lot goes on with him, and to see him out here, I think he's really an interesting player, but how it all works out, that's going to be one of the huge questions for this team, but without a doubt. I think the injuries clearly have been a factor. Chase Young is the biggest thing we know. We didn't know for sure how long he'd be out. Now we know it's at least 4 games. They're going to have to figure out ways to get around him, plus tight end, offensive line. When you talk about a game like this, we'll see some of the depth guys get some shots, and they may be even on the main roster because of some of these other injuries. And I think the running back spot, right? It's been late in camp, but Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. It's been a fascinating situation there to see who's going to emerge as the lead guy. It feels like Robinson has done a really good job, but Gibson's going to have a big role for sure.
They're different players, albeit at the same position. But again, AG converted from a receiver, and we've seen him being used a lot in the passing game, catching out of the backfield. And even Brian Robinson has the ability to do that. This running back room, I think, is really interesting to follow because they're not just pure backs. But B-Rob has really showed when given the ball in his hands, he is a very dynamic player, very hard-run player as well. It's just a matter, not so much to me, as who's going to start, but who's going to get the bulk of the loads and where. And to take advantage of their strengths for that as well. Yeah. If there is a strength of the team, well, we know there is. So let me rephrase that. What would you say the strength of the team is?
I mean, the defensive line is sort of the obvious thing, even without Chase Young, because you have the Pro Bowler, Jonathan Allen, Jerron Payne, Montez Sweat, and there's a lot of solid, interesting players behind them. I do think the running back, though, when you look at what they've been able to have there with Robinson now showing he can do, I mean, any 3 of those guys could be the main back in any given game. It really is a dynamic, potentially dynamic group for sure.
Carson Wentz comes in, and head coach Ron Rivera is quick to say, look, we wanted you. We want you here. This is your team. We understand that he's got basically a year to prove that he can really run this the way that he wants to and the way that they want him to as well. How do you feel that he fits in? Because he's still been kind of learning, and he says he's harder on himself than any of the critics out there, than any fans or any reporters of what we may say of him. He's harder on himself, and he wants it to be perfect, but it is preseason. Nothing's going to be perfect in preseason, as he's still kind of learning a lot with his players, and he's still not even out there with them. He only hasn't been out there with Logan Thomas in-game action, which we would anticipate being a big target of his once we get to the games. How do you feel he fits in to this scheme and to this offense? Because I feel like that's the big thing that they have. This is what we want to run, and we want you to hopefully fit into it.
I mean, I think the reality is, since Scott Turner's been here, they haven't had a consistent presence at quarterback, somebody who's like a legit starting NFL quarterback. 2, the ability to get the ball down the field. I know there's been talk about Carson Wentz just over his career is not the highest completion percentage passer. That's fine when you're making the big plays down the field. He can do that, and that is what I think has been missing in this offense. And now you have McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel. The fact that all these guys can make those plays down the field, I think that is where this offense could go to another level. The underneath stuff will be interesting. He's over his career, sometimes one criticism has been not taking some of the layups, as it were, but I think he's been working on that clearly during camp. So I think you can see how that's going to materialize. But that's what's going to be interesting. Can you combine the long ball with also taking the safe play when possible?
And there's a lot of guys that can cover that underneath area as well, while you do have plenty of speed going deep, for sure. Who has been the most impressive at training camp to you? Is there a player?
Yeah, I gave Kendall Fuller my sort of unofficial MVP of camp. I mean, I think the defense, it's always said the defense gets ahead of the offense. Fine, but he was, I thought, the leader of the defense early and kept it going throughout. I mean, I think some other guys had some moments, Jahan Dotson, Montez Sweat, but I think Fuller, for me, throughout camp was the true baseline of that defense. It's totally solid, and look, even in the games we've seen, the secondary I think has held up. The issue has been just like last week, Mahomes having just. You couldn't get to him, and eventually things break. But I think the secondary, they were held up, and I think Fuller is the primary reason for that.
Holmes doing what Mahomes does. Kendall
Yeah.
Fuller's had a really great camp. Of course, I thought in the game against Kansas City, they seemed to throw at him a lot, but not with much success. He really kind of held his own there, because that is the team that he did come from. As Washington traded him too, he came back over with the Alex Smith trade as well.
Absolutely.
If you could have one breakout performer on this team, on either side of the ball, who would that be?
It's a great question. I don't know. Does Cam Curl still count? Because I feel like he's obviously been a starter. I feel like he's the guy that can get to another level on that defense. And, we'll see about, again, when Chase Young comes back and how the linebackers progress. But that secondary, I think this is, to me, the best starting secondary they've had in years. And Cam Curl looks like he could be the breakout guy from that group. And they're clearly going to use him all over the place, the back of the defense, that sort of Buffalo nickel near the line of scrimmage role as well. So I think his usage is going to be all over the place, and I think he's got the playmaking chops to really have an impressive year.
When he came in, they said the stage wasn't too big as a rookie drafted in the 7th round, and now you see even more confidence coming out of him, understanding the bulk of the load is going to be on him because he's no longer in anybody else's shadow. It's basically his to go out there and really dominate. You want to be able to, at the end of the day, say that you are the winners of the NFC East. Washington wins the NFC East if.
Obviously, injuries always feels like you got to start there. That may be obvious for any of these teams, but last year we saw how things kind of got wrecked late in the year when injuries and some other factors as well kicked in. The Carson Wentz thing is obviously going to have to be is a huge deal. He's been a good quarterback. It's not people. I think the polarization of him over the last 2 years has maybe warped the perception of what he is. He's an absolute starter in this league, but to what end is he? How productive is he going to be? It can't just be, you got to make the big plays. You got to be efficient. You can't make those kind of bonehead plays, things along those lines. So if he can do that, and the avoid the injuries, and the defense is at least middle of the pack compared to where things were last year, I think that could be in play.
Injuries are a big one. That's the biggest thing when I ask Carson, what's it going to take for him to be that guy? He says, first and foremost, he has to be healthy.
Yeah.
And your playmakers have to be healthy if you're going to go anywhere. And we know that bye week does not come until way late in the season. Depth is going to be a big factor, which we'll figure out a little bit more about the depth tonight in our final preseason game. Ben Standig of The Athletic, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks.
Enjoy the game, and we'll catch up with you again back in D.C. Well, we're only not too far away from it here. Just a little bit down I-95. Coming up next, it is part 2 of my conversation with head coach Ron Rivera. You are watching Command Center Game Day Live on Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms, and you're listening to Washington Commanders football.
When safe drivers save up to 30% on their auto insurance for not answering their phone while driving, they feel like a pretty big deal.
Steve, did you get the ice?
Even if they forgot the ice. Save up to 30% on auto insurance with USAA Safe Pilot. Get a quote today.
With a new Toyota, you can practically make summer stand still. From making a splash in a Highlander to fitting in more fun in a Camry or tackling a trailhead in a RAV4 hybrid. Who's a good boy? Enjoy the last of summer in an exciting new Toyota during Toyota's national sales event.
Right now, buy a sporty Camry and take low 1.9% financing, or take 1.9 APR on a Corolla sedan, hatch, or hybrid, or $500 finance cash on a Corolla Cross.
Come in today.
Toyota, let's go places.
And we are at M&T Bank Stadium getting ready to take on the Baltimore Ravens, who have won 22 straight preseason games. Meanwhile, it will be Sam Howell getting the start for Washington, as the starters are going to be sitting back, relaxing, getting ready and prepped for the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is the opportunity for a lot of players to get the attention of the coaching staff, and that includes head coach Ron Rivera. Here's part 2 of my conversation with him. This is presented by Victory Van Moving and Storage, delivering excellent services for 75 years and a proud partner of the Washington Commanders. As you go up into this final preseason game here against the Ravens, like, what are you looking for? Because your starters aren't going to be out there. And this is where you really, I mean, do you have your mind already made up who's going to make the roster, or can it be changed in this game?
It can be changed. I mean, we've got a lot of close battles, and most of those battles really are for the depth position. You know, some guys that'll play special teams for us, but they've also got to be prepared to be able to get on the field and make an impact if they have to play a lot. You know, so as we go through it, you know, tight end is a big position for us. You know, the secondary is another big position for us as far as that's concerned in terms of, you know, who, what, and how are they going to get on the field. And then, you know, as you look through both the fronts, you know, there's a good mix of depth guys that we've got to have, and we've got to make some tough decisions.
You mentioned tight end. How great is it to get Logan Thomas back?
It was exciting. It really has. It's been kind of cool. I go over and watch him when he's doing the work, the intermittent work that he does with the quarterbacks, especially with Carson, and you see that instant connection, which is kind of exciting, because I know one of the things that Carson has always done is he's thrown well to the tight ends. Not having Logan, not having John, and not having Cole out there has been a little bit of a step back for our offense. But like I said, Armani has done such a good job. I think he's really helped to keep that development part of it for Carson going for him.
Well, you still have to put it in your installs.
Yes, we do. Oh, yeah.
Tight end's going to be a big part of that. When it comes to the time of making the cuts, how do you, like, is that difficult for you to call a guy into your office and know that this is life-changing for them?
Oh, for the most part, most certainly it is. You know, I went through it. I understand what it feels like. And then I've done it as a position coach, coordinator, now as a head coach, and it is life-changing. And in a lot of these cases, sometimes, you know, for the most part, it's the end of a football career, and it's the beginning of something else. And then for other guys, it just means, okay, one door may shut here and may open again, or may have to go somewhere else to open another door.
Chase Young put on the PUP list, so he's out at least 4 games, but you get to save that roster spot. What have you seen in just how he's handled this offseason and the injury, and still active there on the sideline in the middle of, you know, the huddle and all the action?
The biggest thing with him you've seen the progression of his return. You see things going well. You see every day he hits another milestone, and you go, okay, he's on his way. He's on his way. You know, this was it was a fairly serious injury, and you know, and fairly invasive repair, but he's come so far, and Doc is really excited about it. Everything he's done in terms of his rehab has been exactly what we've needed. I mean, you know, and getting to see him every day is also really big for us.
I know he loves being around here and the guys, and you can see that infectious attitude with all of them as well. So as you're getting ready for Jacksonville, like, is there certain emotions that build up?
That first game is always a big deal. It really is, because there's, you know, so much hope, so much energy going into that first one, and you know, you've got to be able to temper that, because if you don't, you know, it is an exhausting first emotion, because it is the first game. I mean, you get built up, you get excited, you get geared up, and you know, and then the game's over. Okay, now you got to get back and get ready for the next one.
What's the message for the guys as they're knowing what they're going through, getting ready for that as well?
I think the biggest thing is really about trust and responsibility. And one of the things we talked about is, you know, hey, you got to trust in your technique. You've got to, you know, trust in your teammates. You got to trust in the process. And then, you know, be responsible. Take responsibility for yourself getting ready to go. And we've been harping on that all year with these guys.
Bram Whiteside back in the booth with London Fletcher to my right. Julie Donaldson on her way. We're getting closer to kickoff here at M&T Bank Stadium. You're watching Command Center Game Day live on the Washington Commanders YouTube and social media platforms. And this is the Washington Commanders Football Radio Network.
Veterans, you may have earned a variety of VA benefits. Did you know VA can help you further your education and pursue professional training? The Home Loan Guarantee Program can help you buy, repair, or adapt a home. VA provides housing support if you find yourself homeless or at risk of homelessness. And don't forget world-class health care. Learn more about these and other VA benefits. Visit choose.va.gov.
With Honda, every summer adventure is the destination. Take your adventures farther with Honda, America's most fuel-efficient, full-line automaker. Hurry into a local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily.
You ever wonder why people are always on their phones? They're banking with Bank of America. Look at this guy. He bought those tickets on his credit card and he's racking up the rewards.
She's using Zelle to pay him back for the hot dogs he's about to buy.
That's going to bring it to
And
a
the
close here
announcer?
after 3.
He's not checking the stats. He's finding some investment ideas with Merrill.
And third, as you know in baseball, means 3.
Digital tools so impressive, you just can't stop banking. What would you like the power to do?
I'm back here in the booth with Bram Weinstein and London Fletcher. And guys, we're going into our 90th year as a team. And so many great things we're going to be celebrating this season as well as we do go
You've been listening to Washington.
Our legacy. But really exciting news is we announced on Sonny Jurgensen's birthday that we are officially going to be retiring his jersey, just the 4th in franchise history to do so. It's going to be at the end of the season against the Dallas Cowboys. Very well deserved, probably way past due. But I know Sonny was saying this is just something he looked forward to for a long time.
This organization didn't do that until a year ago, with the lone exception of Sammy Baugh. It was not something that they did. The organization has determined that they wanted to start doing this, and he's at the top of the list. I mean, this is a no-brainer decision to do this, not just for his playing career. He was a revelatory quarterback for this organization. I mean, this is crazy to say this. He's the last quarterback to throw 30 touchdown passes in a season that's worn this uniform. That happened in the late 1960s.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow.
And then, of course, you know, growing up in the area, Frank, Sonny, and Sam was the soundtrack of Washington sports in the glory days. He had this way about him. He just was so relatable in the booth. 55 years in the organization. Retiring his jersey isn't enough. Build a statue for him. Do anything for Sonny.
11 of his 18-year career was spent with Washington. 4 decades in the radio booth, London.
Man, what a well-deserved honor, long overdue, like Bram said. I can remember when I first got here to Washington and Sonny and Sam would come into the locker room and they would interview us after the games, and I was in awe being able to talk to Sonny and Sam, because these were two iconic football players who played in this franchise, played for the Burgundy and Gold. Those were guys that I wanted to look up to and play up to their standard. Well overdue. I mean, I loved our conversations with Sonny. Just a brilliant nice guy. I can remember him with that cigar in his
Yes.
mouth, man. Just, it wasn't even lit. He just have it. And just, man, I'm glad he's here to enjoy, his flowers while he's still here. That's what I'm happy about.
He was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1983, second all-time in franchise history in completions, passing yards, pass yards. 135 games he played for Washington. Sonny's jersey will never be worn again. The number will never be worn again. It'll be up in the rafters. Congratulations to Sonny Jurgensen. Of course, we hope you are all at that Cowboys game to close out the season as well, to be there for that very special moment. Our 50-yard line show, it is coming up next as kickoff is nearing here at M&T Bank Stadium. You are listening to Washington Commanders football.